Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, AmTrust Title Insurance Company, Perfect Building Maintenance, M&T Bank, Customers Bank, Marks Paneth LLP, Ariel Property Advisors, Sterling National Bank, Capital One Bank, Collins Building Services, Meridian Capital Group. Additional support has been provided by grants from AVR Realty Company, Amerant Bank, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, B6 Real Estate Advisors, Briarwood Organization, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chase Commercial Mortgage, Citizens Bank, CPEX Real Estate Services, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handler Properties LLC, Handler Real Estate, Hodges Ward Elliott INC, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Matone Group, New Banks, Newmark Knight Frank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rockefeller Group, Rosewood Realty Services, SJP Properties, Stonehenge NYC, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the Merengoff Family Foundation, and these friends. Everybody loves New York City, but what's really happening in the real estate business? What's happening in retail? What's happening in the office market? What's happening in the residential market? For that subject, I've assembled 4 dynamic individuals who know this New York City, who've been involved with the city, I hate to say probably, if you combine everybody, for close to 200 years. My guests today include Josh Muss, who is the chairman and founder of Muss Development, John Catsimatidis, who's chairman and CEO of Red Apple Group, Stephen Siegel, who's chairman of global brokerage for CBRE and also a principal at Fairstead Realty Capital. And last but not least, Francis Greenberger, who's the chairman and CEO of Time Equities. So, Stephen, you've been involved with real estate since 15 years of age when you were at Bing and Bing.
Right.
Where do you see the market?
Let's do a commercial for a second first. I know you spoke about somebody prior to the show who's very bullish about the commercial market. I'm not bearish, but what's driving the New York City market is new product, the exits to it, or flight to quality as I call it, and the beachheads that people like Google and Facebook and Amazon, who by the way still leases space in Manhattan, even in spite of the disaster in Long Island City that was perpetrated. They have a lease out for 500,000 feet. They already have close to 1 million feet. Google's gobbling up space like there's no tomorrow. Facebook is going to take 1 million feet or more in the near term. Hudson Yards is an unparalleled success. Finally, which long deserved, the trade center is leasing up rapidly. 4 is leased, 7 is leased, 3 is substantially leased now. Uber's about to sign a lease for 300,000 feet. They're contemplating now. I had dinner with Larry Silverstein 3-4 weeks ago, and he said they're even considering building 2 on speculation, which is a huge building, over 4 million feet. But there's enough money out there, he says, available that people are incentivizing him to do it.
So investors are continuing to come to New York, basically. Somebody's funding these developments.
Yes, investors not coming to New York, mostly investors who've been here and feel comfortable with the marketplace. There are the naysayers. I'm sure you've seen them and heard them. And I think that, there's always a dip somewhere. Whether it's coming 2 years or 3 years, I have no crystal ball. As for the residential, that legislation, I think, will prove disastrous in the not too long term. It'll actually cost the middle income constituency that they were trying to serve more money, not less.
Francis, what's your opinion?
I agree with regard to the residential reforms, I think, or changes. I think they will actually reduce the amount of affordable housing available to those that need it most. Really what it does is open up a giveaway. It was an arbitrary taking, and now we have an arbitrary allocation of the taking. So it's not like the apartments that they took through their controls are going to people who need it. And we all know what happens, simple supply and demand. When you make things cheaper, there's more demand, not less. So everybody who's living with a roommate's now going to want their own cheap apartment. Everybody who's out of town wants a pied-à-terre. They say, oh, well, you can get a pied-à-terre for $1,000 a month. They'll say, oh, well, okay. So it's really, and I could go through chapter and verse about, I mean, we know that rent control traditionally enfranchises a lot of people who are in apartments that are too big for them. They've now lost the mobility to leave. Before they could call their landlords. An older person wanted to go to Florida, California, be with their children. Can't do that anymore.
Right, there's no more payouts.
There's no more payouts. I mean, the effect of this legislation, when you really think about it, and when you understand the implication, is the opposite of what the policymakers intended.
I mean, you and Time Equities have been involved with the cooperative and condo business for close to 40 years. I mean, the changes in the legislation stating that you need a 51% of the tenants in the property to get an effective plan will probably kill the market.
It virtually makes it impossible. And, you know, people have very short memories. I guess the people who were in office who passed the law were not around when housing was completely deprived of economic balance so that improvements could be made. The city didn't have a tax base. In 1975, the city, we had an overseer appointed by the state because we couldn't manage our finances. And we're going right back to the same places.
I have two individuals over here who have built in the past 15 to 20 years, residential housing in New York City. Josh, you built in Brighton Beach. Today, you and your son are building in Sheepshead Bay. Would you build today?
Well, I can, from a developer standpoint, it's very hard for us to imagine what we would build today. We've built not only residential, we've built commercial and retail and
hotels, right.
And I can't think of a single one which I would venture out. Office building, of course, we would build if we had a tenant. To speculate in office building, especially in the boroughs, is almost unthinkable. Housing, if you want to keep your business going, you can find an affordable housing opportunity. Speculative housing today, the very top is not viable anymore. And market housing, who knows when they're going to impose more regulations.
See, that's the point that people have said to me. They're going to impose. They started right now. It's going to be all-inclusive. So when this all-inclusive situation, it's going to be difficult. Steve, you were giving an example in the green room about a property that you and your partners were planning to, so the value went down at least 20%.
Our entire portfolio, that's an actual hard factual example of it.
I ran a panel a couple of weeks ago, and somebody said, how many people sitting here had representatives going to Albany to see if they were able to change this? You know, they had 9 points, the initial plan. They were over a number of points of view. How many people went there? What, no one expected this to happen? John?
It's a serious problem, and a lot of people don't realize how serious it is yet. But the progressive Democrats that are there now, I wouldn't have them run a supermarket. They're making billions and billions of dollars of decisions. And I wouldn't hire them to run a supermarket.
So if you talk about the people in politics, but you're building in Coney Island. Why? I mean, and you built in Myrtle Avenue, you built in downtown Brooklyn.
And all the buildings are very successful. We built twin towers on the beach in Coney Island. I mean, the commercial would be that I get on and say, when you open up your doors and you breathe in that ocean air, I certify you will live 20 years longer. Certified.
Can't be
Do you
proved.
guarantee?
And I guarantee. The fact is we had plans to build 3 more towers. But plans are sort of on hold. I didn't push the button yet. We are building in St. Petersburg, Florida now. The plans have been approved and we're going ahead. And we're going to open up a Florida office and look at other opportunities in Florida. You have 21 million people in Florida today. You have 21 million people in New York State today. 5 years from now, I think it'll be 25 million in Florida, 18 million in New York State. So New York is still the capital of the world, but I think you're going to shake it up. You're going to have the middle class. You have the people that can afford it and will afford it anytime. But there's a section of people that say enough is enough. I'm going to Florida.
I mean, a lot of people were talking, and I've
Taxes
done
alone.
shows with regard to transit-oriented developments. You recently acquired a couple of properties, I know, in Michigan, other markets, in Connecticut. You don't want to remain in New York to buy something, or
Well,
is it
I mean-
untenable to buy?
Michael, we own property in 30 states.
Right.
And we own every kind of property known to man except hotels. So, and our firm has a 30-year history of investing outside New York. I'm certainly extraordinarily happy today that that's been our strategy for a long, long time. And just like you were saying, I mean, we're in the ground in West Palm. We're building apartments right now. We're about to build a major tower in Chicago. We just finished one in Cedar Rapids, Michigan. So,
So here's my question. You're building, as you said, you've been in 30 states. Why don't you continue to build in the Big Apple? Or is it untenable based on the circumstances today?
I feel, we also invest internationally. And when we invest internationally, we also always look at the government. Is it reliable? Is it transparent? When you own property, it's almost an illusion because it's really, you own what the government tells you own.
You're renting it from the government.
And-
Because if you don't pay those
exactly.
real estate taxes, you don't own it.
If the government isn't reliable, if they're not a good partner for you, why would you go into business with them? And that's how I feel in New York right now.
Josh,
We've lost a reliable partner.
We're forgetting one major thing, and especially I sort of winced when we talked about the Florida. In Florida, there might be another 2 million people from New York, but they'll all be over 65. Some younger people, but in New York, you have the young, the ambitious, the wannabes, and they're not going anywhere else. That's why Google and Amazon are looking for space in New York, because they need the technical expertise of the young people. They'll figure it out. There are a lot of people who won't be able to figure out. So we got to figure out what to do real estate-wise in order to take advantage of that.
You brought up the hotel market before, that you built a hotel. In today's market, in New York, it's becoming untenable to even build a hotel.
My first, last, and only.
John?
I better talk to you. We're building a hotel in Florida
In New York. I don't know what's doing in Florida.
The concern is there. New York is still the capital of the world, but there's a concern. And my advice to friends is proceed with caution.
I think there's also an inflated value still on land for development. I was going to ask John if Coney Island is rental, and if it is, you probably bought the land a while ago.
It's a rental. And we were planning the rest of them to be rentals too. We bought the land a while ago, and we're satisfying the values of our perceived values of our land.
Okay, so if you build an apartment building today, for the most part, the land is from a cost perspective, requires condominiums. Condominium market in luxury is overbuilt, as far as I'm concerned. Rental apartments, when the land value goes down, I think will resume development because of this rent law. As these lower cost apartments we absorbed, some of them, by the way, we have apartments that when you're required to do health and fire safety, construction, when we're renovating an older building, which we've done many times and renovated all the apartments. The incentive to do that with the amortization they now permit, and
Right, the $89 a
yeah,
month.
$85, whatever it is a month with a 15-year cap is really very attractive. not to us. And we literally have sat and pondered some buildings and some apartments that require extensive dollars invested, and we actually think about putting a board over the door.
You don't think getting your money back in 100 years without any return
Well,
is a good deal?
Definitely not for me at my age.
By the way, that's another unsaid thing. The cost of construction and renovation in New York City is going through the roof. To renovate, for example, commercial space, in the past 5 years or so, I think we've renovated approximately 1 million square feet. In each case, we're spending more than we originally cost to build the building with the land. So
Office space, though.
office space. So that is also dragging down the market, the cost of construction, and the cost in the construction, the per hour, the labor just keeps going up.
What used to be a reasonable build-out for a tenant, office tenant installation, $125 to $175 a foot, is now $375 a foot, with the technical and the hookups and everything.
And the technology, you got to bring in sprinklers.
Hey, with regard to that, let's talk about some of the new entities taking place. What's your thoughts, whoever wants to address this, with regard to the office share market? We were talking briefly about WeWork, we were talking Notel, we're talking about Regis and the others. What's your thoughts about it, Francis?
Well, we've spent a great deal of time thinking about and developing different forms of co-working spaces. And what the model that we're using in a number of locations, not in New York, is that we're building a tenant amenity lounge connected with a co-working component, which the amenity lounge serves the entire building, and the co-working is whatever it is. And
The co-working, is it owned by you or is it being?
it's owned by us, and we use it both to attract as sort of an incubator for the building, so smaller tenants can come in there and eventually grow into more permanent space, or conversely, following the model that sometimes businesses that have premises upstairs need some expansion space for a temporary need, and want to be able to have the flexibility of some flex space mixed with their permanently leased space. So I think it has a real purpose and a place in the office market. I think the models that are being offered by some of the companies like WeWork, they haven't mastered the economics. And in addition, real estate owners are not going to sit around and see a major component of the market be taken over by third-party providers. And I just read an article yesterday about several major owners, Heinz, for instance, and a number of others. I think Heinz partnered with Convene to create their own co-working
Amenity space and
spaces,
so on.
which of course
Empire
makes...
State Development won't lease. I have a landlord I represent on the west side that WeWork came in for and said they'll take half the building, and he wouldn't even have a meeting.
All right, we've rejected WeWork in the same
I
basis.
think what Francis described is absolutely perfect, and most of the buildings that are being developed now have these amenity, and a lot of the ones that are redeveloped. There's a building at Durstones on one of the first Times Square building, 4 Times Square, built in 1999, and they are renovating it to the tune of $125 million, upgrading it, 20 years old.
I mean, it's a 20-year-old building.
20 years old. It's like a baby compared to some of the office supply. But they're putting in an amenity floor. They're putting in some outside space, things that tenants want today. What landlords are realizing is that WeWorks, or the We Company, is really a competitor for them. I mean, they'll take big blocks of space, long-term leases, and then they'll lease it to tenants that might otherwise take some space in that building.
What about the co-living?
And there's no credit on those leases.
What about the
Limited
co-living
liability.
phenomena?
I just don't think it's a large-scale thing. I mean, I really don't. And co-living is somewhat like the We model. Eventually, those people are going to want to go out on their own and not live with with groups of other people in common area spaces and things like that. So.
What about the state of retail? John, you have enough retail in New York City and around the country. Where do you see retail?
I think retail has a lot of troubles. If you go all over New York City, there's a lot of empty stores. Retailers are having trouble staying in business between the minimum wage going from 9 to 15, between the unions, between everything has compounded. A minimum wage going from 9 to 15 is a 40% increase plus 50% fringes on top of that 40. It's a serious problem competing because a lot of the Amazons of the world and the home delivery. My kids don't know what it is to go to a store. They pick up the phone, I want this now, and they're willing to pay. We were growing up, we all wanted a car when we were 17 and 18.
Yep.
My kids never mention a car. They don't care about cars. They'll Uber it wherever they go. Between Ubering it, home delivery on food, home delivery on whatever they need, it's becoming a different world. And we all have to know how to compete.
Something that we all wanted when we were young was home ownership. Are we seeing any home ownership at all?
They don't care because of the fact that we used to be able to buy an apartment or buy a home for $300,000, and in 5 years it will double. Now there's no doubles left. I don't know unless you see it. Is there any doubles left?
I had a cut in half on two of my places.
I'll give you an example. My daughter wants a bigger apartment, or she rented an apartment. She was paying $4,500 a month, which is fine. And then the person who owned the condo says, I'm going to sell it. He says, I got to buy it, Dad. Well, right now, when she buys the condo for $1.5 million, and she was paying $4,500 rent, between the amortization, the maintenance, the insurance, et cetera,
Capital invested.
you know what her monthly, it's $8,900 a month instead of $4,500.
Right. Josh, you're in the boroughs. What's happening in the boroughs today? Queens.
You find a lot of niche builders, people building 20, 30 unit buildings. The retail, the strips are doing well, where people do the traffic, walk the streets. Of course, the small shops are pretty much a mom and pop, and they're doing well. Hotels are a big challenge because people are building them down the block, around the corner, and down the street, so that the competition is very difficult. Commercial, as I said, I don't see any real new commercial in terms of office space in the boroughs because there just aren't enough density, except for perhaps in Long Island City at the moment or downtown Brooklyn. There aren't enough large tenants willing to commit in advance.
Stephen, you were always involved with New Jersey. What do you see about New Jersey today?
New Jersey's been flat for about 25 years. When I was a young kid working in New Jersey, it was the exodus to the suburbs, the running track, the tennis, the environment that you can give your employees. Now it's urbanization of just about every market in the United States. New Jersey rents, if you kind of track them, the cost of inflation are flat. There's limited to no new development. There are pockets of it here.
Right, the Jersey City market.
Jersey City is residential, except for the waterfront. There was no new office development. There's nothing new on the waterfront, although Matt Kelly's contemplating a building. But as Joshua said, they're looking to pre-lease a 500,000 of a 1 million square foot building. Pre-leasing is, and always will be difficult because of the tenants' timing and whether they can really have that much lead time and so on to get there.
And you have a new progressive governor in New Jersey. How's that going?
Yeah.
The new frontier is probably the Bronx. And that's because there's a lot of cheap land available, and there's a lot of housing, affordable and low-income housing programs available, so people are fitting it in. But you're not finding any luxury housing in the Bronx.
No, we had 80 buildings, as you know, 5,000 units in the Bronx, which we bought very early in our progress as a company, and it was horrific.
Yeah.
Disaster.
And then there's downtown Staten Island, where the retail there seems to be perhaps a bust. Hopefully not.
You mean near the Wheel?
Yeah. The wheel demise didn't help that
Well, it's
at
a
all.
bust.
But what a terrific opportunity for housing once upon a time. We have a 50-year wait on it. Maybe we'll build something there.
Industrial?
Industrial. Nobody's building
No,
industrial.
he's talking residential.
What's your thoughts about the repositioning of malls?
As John said, and regular storefronts now have to have drop-off and pickup for e-commerce, and drop-off and pickup will bring people to the stores, and they'll have their goods there as well, and people will tend to stay and shop. The exception being my daughter, who shops all the time, regardless. The vertical malls used to be a disaster, but Time Warner Center is one of the highest producing malls now. And I think all the malls have to be repositioned, and they have to have something that draws people in besides a store and gets them there, then they'll shop.
So in summation, I'm not sure how bright my apple is over there, but hopefully 2019, 2020, the world will get better. Hopefully things will improve. I'd like to thank Josh, John, Steve, and Francis, and see you next week.
Thank you, Mike.